kidding me? Oh, goodness. My local farm shop reserved me a large bag of beef bones for £5 and I was absolutely blown away by the size of this bag. Trouble is, I normally cook in small batches and I hadn't considered the amount of fridge space I'd need. Luckily, with it being Friday, it was pretty empty, so after a bit of a shuffle around, I was able to make just enough room. But I couldn't waste too much time as I only had the weekend to process as many of these bones as I possibly could. And there was a really good selection of bones in here too. Knuckle bones, marrow bones, ribs. However, I wasn't sure how many bones I could process at one time, so I thought if I fill up my pan first, then I'll avoid either roasting too many or too few. Being 17 litres, this pan is rather large, but I also had to be mindful of the fact that my oven is probably a bit smaller than the average oven, so I wouldn't be able to process anywhere near as many as I would like to, at least in one go. But to be fair, I was able to fit in a significant amount, probably around half the bag, and this left about 3 to 4 inches at the top of the pot, which gave me plenty of room to cover the top of the bones with water. And with that, I've got all my pans ready, my baking sheets. I do have another glass baking sheet, but that's being used elsewhere at the moment, so I had to settle for this non-stick one, and I don't like them, so that's why I'm covering it with paper. But now it's just a matter of arranging all the beef bones where I can, because obviously I want to fit as much in the oven as I can. I don't want to cram them too close together, otherwise they'll end up steaming when I want them to roast. At the same time, I don't want to be putting any on top of each other because there's only so much oven space, and I don't want the bones hitting the racks above or touching any of the heating elements. So this did take a little bit of time to arrange, and I did faff around a little bit, but I got this puzzle together eventually. Next was fitting them all in the oven, and as mentioned, it is a smaller oven than average, so there was only so much room to work with, and I wanted to process as much as I could, so I had to slide some right at the bottom, which I wouldn't normally do without a rack, but it was just trying to do what I could with the space I have. And because a lot of the bones were fatty already, I chose not to put any extra fat in order to help with the browning. And while they're roasting in the oven, I just got on with the onions. Now, I know a lot of people just chuck the onions straight in and they probably don't chop them very much, probably quarter them or halve them. But I personally like a bit of surface area because I like to brown them in some butter. The brown adds more flavour, it makes it deeper and richer. Some people also like to chuck the skins into the water with them, and that's absolutely fine. I choose not to with these because these haven't come off our allotment as we've run out. So these have come from the farm shop and they're not pesticide free. Next, I just got to get the onions into the pan. I've got some melted butter in here and I'm going to brown them just enough, not on the verge of burning or anything, but it's enough to give them that, I know it's a bit cliche, but it really gives it that umami flavour, you know, that warming, hearty kind of flavour before you add it all into the pot with the stock. And now the bones are looking nice and brown, so they're all ready to pot up. So I'm getting my big pan ready again, and I'm going to put in those onions that we've just browned, and then I'm going to add a little bit of water to the bottom of the pan just to help sort of deglaze the pan. Just put it back on the heat, ease off some of that browning because that's going to go back in the pan just to give it that deep, rich flavour. Next, I strategically added those bones back into the pot. I was adding all the bigger ones in first because it's easier to put the larger ones in, because with the smaller ones you can place those around in the gaps and the nooks and stuff. I just wanted to mention that obviously the idea of cooking things in large batches is to potentially save money. Now, I usually use a lot of stock, which I generally make in small batches in the slow cooker. This large batch, it's all well and good having a large quantity to make in one go, but there's also the cost of cooking it, and I had to decide how I was going to do it. Keeping it on the hob, it's really expensive compared to having it on low in the oven. I'm not sure if that's the same for everybody. I'm not sure if it's just a type of oven that I have, but anybody that's in the UK right now knows that it's astronomical prices for gas and electric especially, and to keep this running for 24 hours, I really had to think carefully about how I was going to go about processing this, and that's why I opted to put it in this large pan, and I'm going to put it in the oven overnight on around 120 to 130 degrees because I've noticed that that does actually keep the meat up in the green, whereas if I did it on the hob, it tends to hover somewhere between amber and red. Alright, so I'm pretty much there, getting all the last of these nicely browned bones put into the pan, and the next thing to do now is to top it up with plenty of fresh cold water, and the amount that I'm putting in is just enough to cover it by around an inch or so. Now, I didn't add any carrots to this, but I am adding some other aromatics, and in this case I'm adding some rosemary, some thyme, some whole black peppercorns and a couple of bay leaves. All right, maybe 3. But I also add a couple of tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. The reason is it helps to break down the collagen, but it also helps to draw out essential nutrients such as magnesium and calcium. And then the lid goes on, and while I wait for the next half hour, 40 minutes, I'll make myself a cup of tea and just wait it out. So around 45 minutes later, we'll take the lid off and see what we have. And we have some scum. Well, that's all right. That's fine. It's totally normal. What's not normal is probably the size of the spoon that I chose to use, seeing as I'm used to smaller batches, but we'll work with it. It didn't take long. It's not fussy. Just get the worst of it off and get it ready to go in the oven. Now I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I realise I should have checked it before, but my pan was as wide as my oven and I had no idea. I had to remove the lid because it was too high for the oven with the lid on, and I definitely couldn't even put a rack in there. I've covered it in foil. The pan was so heavy as well. It was ridiculously heavy, but it's gone in. It's on 125 degrees C, and I'm just going to leave it for 24 hours. Alright, so I'm quite excited to see what we have because I know what I can smell at this point, and it's so deep and rich and meaty and yummy smelling. It smells absolutely delightful. Quite nervous getting this out of the oven because it is so heavy and I don't want to hold it by the handles because I worry that they're just going to snap off or something. But anyway, I'm taking the foil off very carefully, so obviously I don't want to be bombarded with steam, and I'm quite excited to see what we have underneath, and it looks gorgeous. It smells lovely. It's probably reduced about an inch and a half, but that's still blipping away lovely, and it smells amazing. Next is straining the bones and the bits and bobs away from the liquid. So I'm just fishing those out with a slotted spoon. Started off with a pair of tongs, but then I had to get further and further down, and my hand was getting too close to the hot liquid. So I'm using a large slotted spoon to get out as much as I can. Switching bowls when I need to because there's quite a lot to get out. And then when all the bones and most of the aromatics have come out, it's just a simple matter of trying to strain the liquid through the sieve. And I must say, in a pan of this size with that weight, it was quite hard. I was worried about splashing it everywhere, but most of all I was worried that the handles were going to break off and it would just fall all over the floor and burn everything. But no, it went okay. I should have more trust in it. But no, it went well. This is going all right. It looks good, it smells amazing, and so far I'm pretty happy. Next, just straining the last bit through the sieve, and then I emptied all the sediment out of the large pot and gave it a good wash, ready to strain both the large bowls back into the large pots, which, as you can see, didn't go quite so well at first. Oops. But that's all right, no matter. We just try it again. So the 2 bowls combined gave me about 5.5 litres. Once cooled, I could put the entire pot into the fridge, allow it to chill completely so that I could skim off the fat. Now, I currently don't have confidence to do pressure canning, but I do plan to do that at some point in the future, which I'm very excited about. But until then, I just store them in 500ml bags in the freezer. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. My name's Karen, and I'll see you in the next video.